Hello, I'm Dazzling One, and today I'm going to be discussing some things that are on my mind. So, it's hard to believe that it's already September. We're in the final stretch of the year with only 3 months left to go. It's also Rosh Hashanah this coming week, and if you celebrate the Jewish New Year's like I do, then you're probably pretty excited for it. But also, some people have been saying with Rosh Hashanah coming up, because it's going to be the end of another sabbatical cycle or shemitah, that there is going to be some issues with the economy, which isn't good to think about. Dow Jones experienced some issues a week ago, and supposedly they recovered from it, but maybe something will happen, maybe something won't. Either way, don't let it be a source of fear, but I would advise you to be prepared if you can, to stock up on anything that can be preserved, canned goods, rice, beans, water. Just make sure you're prepared for the worst, but just plan for the best, and don't let it get you, but have a contingency plan. So, in my own life, I just started school 3 weeks ago, and if you've been watching my videos, you're probably aware of that. And so, with the start of school, it's my final semester of community college, and I have a lot of big decisions to make after this. So, with it, I've come to find that there are people that are just bombarding me this semester. I'm going to school with some people I went to high school with I haven't seen in years, and people I met in college, and so I find myself every break having to divide my time between them, and not all of them know each other, and I'm mediating, and it can be very overwhelming. And then it seems as if when I go to sleep at night, I will be woken up at 2 or 3 in the morning randomly, and it's hard to go back to sleep, and then I get up at 5 to go to the gym. So while I'm a morning person, it can still be just draining because I'm not getting enough sleep, and then when I do go to school, I gotta focus on my work, and then people are coming up to me constantly wanting to talk and hang out, or just saying they want to study. And I even joined a Bible study, which is good, but it's just the ideal that there's not a lot of time to myself anymore. And maybe this is all part of just getting older, but I don't know. And the other thing I wanted to just announce is that just be praying for me, because I am looking towards October of this year. There's no guarantees here, but submitting to a pretty well-known publisher, because right now they're, well, not at this moment, but coming in October, they're going to be open to unsolicited manuscripts. And so I would like to submit. And I've been editing for a long time. I've been writing since I was 17, but because of school and managing the channel, it's been difficult for me to just solely focus on that. And I'm really still going at it, regardless of all of the things I have to get done. So I'm praying that I would submit to the publisher of God's choosing. It would be a very steady and easygoing process. I know publishing can be a nightmare for some people, and if you don't have an agent, it can also be very hard for anyone to want to read your work in the first place. But I really believe that God gave me these writings, and I have a couple of books that I want to turn into series. And my goal is to help people with these books, to inspire, to encourage, and to write transparent characters that not just a few people can relate to, but many, and to tell stories and tell the truth in such a way that it can both entertain and inform. And so that's my goals looking towards the fall. And so with just feeling drained and under constant attack, even in my home, there are appliances that just want to break. And there's really no logical explanation for it, because much of these objects aren't old, they're fairly new. So that's the other thing that's a little weird as well. And so I'm just asking you guys to pray for me, because sometimes I feel like Satan's trying to attack my vitality, my livelihood, my sanity, just by little things happening. And so I also want to apologize to anyone who's been messaging me or emailing me on any forms of social media connected to this channel, because I probably haven't been getting back to you, and I'm going to just warn you in advance, it's going to be a while before I get back because of all the things going on in life right now. So with that all said, so I'm in an art history class, because the classes I'm taking right now are art history, diversity, sociology, and communications. I like all my classes so far. I haven't started diversity or communications, and I don't look forward to communications because that includes public speaking. It's a speech class, but I do like writing, so hopefully it can help me get over that hurdle of being in front of people and speaking. And so in my art history class, we had an assignment. It was a visual analysis. It was just pretty much when you go to a museum or place where artwork is displayed and you analyze an art piece and you write a paper on it describing its texture, composition, color, value, all of that good stuff about it, right? And so I was going to go to one museum, but it turned out not to have any artwork that I wanted to write about, so I went to a second museum. And what I found interesting about just art history in general, because when I first started community college, I was on the associates in science, and my plan was to transfer and then get my bachelor's in science, but because of scheduling conflicts with my classes, I had to have a change of plans, and I'm on the general degree, and I'll transfer and get my bachelor's in science or biology somewhere else. And that's another thing. I have big decisions to make after this semester as well, where I'll go to school, and that could change a lot as well. So in my art history class, we were discussing prehistory, before written history, very interesting stuff, the days of antiquity, ancient history, mythology, my favorite kind of art. And we were talking about the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic era, and all of the things they believed were done. And so one of the things I found very interesting was that with shamanism, because there were some artworks that were cave paintings, for example, the bird-headed man with the bison. Now, because in school they believe that hybrids and modern science doesn't support that there were hybrids that once walked the earth, which you know if you follow my channel or anyone else who discusses this stuff, that hybrids did walk the earth. It's described in the book of Giants, it's described in the book of Enoch in Genesis 6:4. Fallen angels did come down, they did mate with the women. They mixed their seed with ours, but also they mixed their seed with the animals. And the goal behind this was to corrupt the earth. And this is why God had to flood the earth. And so much of what these people saw in the days of antiquity or in the antediluvian world was real hybrids. But of course, we dismiss it today in modern education as shamans wearing masks. Yes, shamans did wear masks that were like animals, but there was a lot of inspiration behind that as well. And so in this painting, we're looking at a man with a bird head, and he has an atlatl, but the thing about it was we start talking about how he believed he was going to the spirit world. Now in the paranormal community, we call this astral projection or an out-of-body experience because the person is leaving their body. Of course, when you're talking about it from a educational standpoint, what's happening to make him believe that he is going out of his body is sleep deprivation, fasting so he's not eating or drinking, or maybe he's tripping on some fermented fruit, which has the same effects as alcohol. And so it's just interesting to see when you compare the way the paranormal community observes things compared to, say, someone who's more of a rational thinker. And as someone who just loves science and also studies the paranormal and is going to school to study science, it's just like I see these two opposing forces, and a lot of it's mostly the Hegelian dialect, because some say if you can prove the paranormal, science is no longer the paranormal, and if you can prove science of the paranormal, it's not that either. But truth is, there are some things out there that are unexplained, that we can't explain with equations or with a theory or with a method, that can't be tested, that can't be measured. And then of course there are things that can be explained. So it's just interesting to look at all of that as well. And so, but I went to the museum on my own time during this weekend, and the first museum was a contemporary art museum, and so was the other. It was a lot smaller, but as I went into the last room closest to the door and I was walking around, a lot of that stuff I would argue isn't art. And that's another argument you can make, is what is art? Who defines it? And in class we discussed how a lot of religious or sacred art is not considered authentic art. And I used to think that was inaccurate, yet later after going to the museum and observing it, I can see why now. But when I went into the last room, there were a couple of pictures of what I first glance I would have said were tribal or ceremonial, and they were by Hugh Locke. And so one of them was called Saturn. It was a 2007 piece of artwork, and it really caught my attention. And so I stopped to read the little description or caption beside it, but then I looked up at it, and immediately I realized how demonic this was. So here you had these ceremonial or Orisha or Santeria or voodoo, whatever beads, right, that it had used for prayer, used for spells, and also to bring certain things like white is peace, blue and white has to do with the sea, red has to do with fertility and vitality and strength, and other colors represent other things. And so I was amazed by this, because as someone who has studied the occult, I understand when I see something. And it also had hollowed out eyes, and they also had babies just around it, like the heads of decapitated baby dolls. And so it was disgusting to me. Its hands were covered in blood. Now, I read the description online later that it's supposed to represent the rulers and how corrupt they are and all of that. But in reality, this is representation of a demon. This is representation of Moloch, of Lilith, this spirit of infanticide that enjoys murdering babies. And to see this pegged as art in itself is just haunting, and it's disgusting, and it's revolting. So I went to the next museum, and as I was going through it, I saw first the European art, and then I went into another room, and it was Egyptian, Roman, and Greek art, followed by Gothic and just art depicting Christianity, and then into the Native American, the Asian, and the African art, right? And it was just great in there because I love artwork. I'm someone who loves art. I'm kind of a walking contradiction because I love art and I love science, and the two don't really complement each other. I like the ease and the grace of art, but I like the rational and the analytical and the structure of science and explanation. So anyways, I went into these rooms, and it was amazing to see that this is the kind of stuff that I discuss on this channel and that I hear other people discussing. This is just more proof that the people in the ancient world did actually see, in fact, fallen angels. There was an incursion. They did cohabit. They were coexisting. This is why they were depicting it. People are like, oh, they were just into polytheism, and they just had a pantheon, and they're just depicting it, and it's all mythological, right? But these people had to draw inspiration from somewhere. But it also goes to show that these people weren't as stupid as people like to think that they are. That there was complexity, and there was a sense of understanding about nature and about the way the world worked prior to even modern science textbooks as well. People like to brag that we're a lot smarter and wiser than they were because we understand that the sun isn't a god or the moon isn't a goddess or whatever, right? But at the same time, people today barely want to learn. The only reason they do is because it's mandatory, and they don't know very much about nature and survival, as well as when you look at civilizations like Mesopotamia, which is considered the first written civilization because prehistory means before written history, and we look at how they used sun-dried clay that they laid out in the sun that formed into tablets, and they pressed on it with reed, which formed styluses. It's like we're repeating what they did with tablets and styluses, because I just purchased a tablet recently. I really love it for school, for this channel, and for writing, and here we are. There's nothing new under the sun. We draw inspiration from these people. Why is it that people like to reenact these things? So the thing is, as I was going through it, I was just kind of chilling to me to see all this stuff, and I found myself explaining a lot to my mom and to my siblings, like, oh, this is this, that. And as I was going through it, I also realized just the idolatry as well. So when I got into the eastern section and I went into one of the rooms, I realized it was a temple, and it had ascended master looking characters sitting in a lotus position, I believe. And what was strange about it is, at first I didn't really think much of it. I mean, it was kind of weird to be in a temple in a museum, but I had no idea that they would set it up like that. But as I was standing there, I felt something go in my ear, but really hard and powerful. It was almost like this get out. And at first, my very initial reaction was, no, I'm not going anywhere because you just told me to get out, because I'm kind of hard-headed like that. But then another side of me is like, why am I standing here in this temple whenever I was here? And not only that, but just backtracking a little bit. When I went through the Egyptian art into the European Christian art, what I found was this: how it was copied, how the image of Christ today is inaccurate. As I knew before, it's based on a Pope's son by the name of Caesar Borgia. God warned about having graven images because he knew that people would worship the image, and it would lead to this false perception of who Christ was and what he looked like, and people would pray to his mother. And it's copied off of Isis and her son Horus, and you can see the Madonna, and you can see Isis and Horus, just the similarities between them. And it was really interesting to go from the Egyptian art into the Christian art, because then it made it even more apparent. And then, of course, even people just thinking Jesus was tall, light-haired, light-eyed, light-skinned, with long flowing hair, when he didn't look anything like that. So I can see that as well. And also just the saints were throwing up all the satanic hand signs like as above, so below. The same hand sign that Baphomet throws up as well. So that in itself was disgusting to me. And to see that it's been passed off as Christian art for centuries when it's all telling lies didn't make me happy at all. But when I was in that temple and I felt that breeze and I left, I didn't really think too much of it. But later on, when I went to sleep that night, I had some disturbing dreams about those particular images of idolatry. And what I realized is that people like to say that America's a Christian nation when we can clearly see that the majority of the people, even if they call themselves Christian, which it's a hard to define term since everyone isn't here, isn't. But also there's been this polarity since the beginning of time. If you go back to Sir Francis Bacon, who was influential in the founding of this country, and many of the founding fathers and who they associated themselves, like look at Benjamin Franklin and the Hellfires Club, people are like, oh, we were Christians from the beginning. I believe the people who came here may have been Christian, but the people running the country were into Freemasonry, into Egyptian mythology, and into all of this sacred geometry, and because of it they want to establish a new Atlantis. And so this is why you have the first president of the United States, George Washington, in the same image like Zeus. And this is why if you go to Washington DC, you see all this idolatry, all of this paganism, like this own version of pantheon of Greece or Rome. So these people had clear inspiration from the ancients, and many of them were into the occult. And so when it talks about in the Bible New Babylon, how she's a dwelling place for demons, I can clearly see that. When I go into the museum, I realize what we see on TV. People think that, oh, I'm just looking at art, but this isn't really art. This is sacred stuff to people. Whether it's a recreation or it's a gift from a generous benefactor, you have to take into account that these were the same idols that people bow down and pray to, and the spirits still dwell around them. People used to offer food. They used to pray to these things, and people do to this day still. So it's just fascinating to see that even in museums you see this, and just if you even go to like a bank or any public building, you'll see some kind of statue of a god or goddess, and there's really no logical explanation why it's there except, oh, there was a generous wealthy person who decided to donate this as a gift to such and such. But you really got to take into consideration why are they here and all of that. And so what's interesting about all of it is I can see where Babylon is a dwelling place of demons. I know some people say Babylon is the Vatican or it's Dubai or it's going to be rebuilt in the Middle East, and I'm not going to debate that, but I'm just saying that America does have a lot of similarities economically. And if we look at the fact that we do have, in fact, Sadars, which I saw plenty of those in all of the cultures, which are just serum. We have clearly paid homage to Lilith by looking at Planned Parenthood and just all of these statues we have here. And a lot of it's due to diversity and all of these cultures blending together, a melting pot. I would say it's the equivalent of Mesopotamia, which was the Fertile Crescent where everyone wanted to go. That area for the longest time was conquered and reconquered. It was run by the Assyrians, it was run by the Akkadians, it was run by the Persians, and so forth. That area is where Babylon was located. It was very diverse. It was a place of rich import. Later, the Roman Empire took control of it, and now America is sort of like that. The West is like that. The power has shifted from the East to the West. And so, as a warning, I'm just saying that some people say, why am I experiencing night terrors and demonic attacks? I'm a Christian. I'm not reading any occult literature. I'm not trying to dabble in it. I'm not watching any horror films. I don't know anyone in the occult. Why am I experiencing these things? Sometimes it's because of your surroundings. All around us there are portals. There are ley lines. This is why concert halls and arenas are built on it, to channel energy. Even in the museum, the way they strategically placed a lot of these figures were in a way to channel energy, because when people just reach up like, look at this or look at that, they're reaching to these things unbeknownst, and because of it, it's taking their energy from them. And God's not going to judge you harshly on something you did not know, but I'm just warning you just to use discernment, to be aware, to be cognizant of what is around you, and to realize that we live in an area, we live in a place that is set up to cause us to let things in, to invite stuff into our life, to have spirits attached to us. The people that run the world know this. The people that put together a lot of these things know this. And so you may not know it, but now that you're aware, just always pray, just be aware, and you'll be fine. And so this leads me into the other thing I wanted to talk about, and that was I was watching some television, and I watched The Strain, Dominion, and Even Fear the Walking Dead, which I've never watched a Walking Dead episode before, but I did decide to watch it to catch symbolism because I want to do a video towards the end of the year on all of this stuff. I want to do a separate one for TV shows and then another one for movies. So with Dominion, I noticed that they're really twisting the Bible. They like to tell you a story and then they like to just twist it way out of proportion. And because of the biblical illiteracy, most people are going to think that is the truth and they won't question it. And of course, then there's glorification of fallen angels. Now they turned Michael and Gabriel into these fiends pretty much who do all this crazy stuff that the archangel Michael and Gabriel would be ashamed to see themselves doing if they could see this. And then of course there is The Strain, which is about a vampire virus that's sweeping New York City, and they're constantly fighting it, and most of the people don't even know it's happening. They're ignorant to it. On Staten Island they were made aware of it, but really even with that, once again, you have all of these vampires reporting to the quote-unquote master vampire, which I pointed out in my last Things on My Mind video. These ancients resemble the same Anunnaki statues if you look at ancient Babylon in that region, and also someone pointed out that they look similar to Pan's Labyrinth, and people were just telling me how you can see creatures like this on movies, but they know what they're talking about. The ancients are the fallen angels. They have many names among the occult, and they're just telling you that there were certain species that coexisted with us at one time, and they're coming back. And when they come back, they're going to be violent. And so there was a lot of blasphemy in the show as well, a lot of mockery of God, and so forth. And then in Fear the Walking Dead, what I got a kick out of was how they pretty much blatantly came out and told you in the TV show with the main family that the media is not going to tell you anything if all stuff hits the fan. They were like, oh, the media is going to inform us. They're going to let us know that they got this all under control, right? People were distracted by police brutality because they saw police beating a homeless man in Los Angeles, right? Well, guess what? People were busy rioting and looting and doing stuff like that over that situation while the zombie virus was spreading. And how much of that has the ring or the merit of truth to it? Because when you look at today, they're always distracting us with police brutality, this shooting, this, that. They're not going to tell us if something hits the fan, not till it's too late. If the economy is about to collapse, are they going to tell you? No, all of the wealthy are pulling their money out of the bank. If there is some kind of virus, you think they're going to tell you? No, they're going to withdraw themselves, and then they're going to let the people basically be thrown to the wolves. And it's not to scare you or be a fearmonger, but even in TV and movies and music, they're telling you constantly something is coming, and people are like, oh, you're trying to scare me, you're trying to brainwash me with fear. Look, if you can't handle the truth, then don't listen, but they're telling you in the media, and your favorite television shows and music and movies are telling you, so clearly there's something up. They're not just all deciding, hey, post-apocalyptic, apocalypse is such a great ideal, I just want to write movies and TV shows. We've been so inundated with that kind of garbage for so long that there are people who look forward to this kind of stuff, not realizing how terrible it's truly going to be. Yes, I want to see the return of Christ, but at the same time, I know once it starts, there's no going back, there's no stopping it. So, with that all said, and then just a couple of other things I want to comment on. So, President Obama is changing the name of Mount McKinley to Denali, I hope I'm saying that name right, which means anointed one, which is interesting that he's going to change it now. Many people have all of these theories on Obama's role with the New World Order, but I thought I'd throw that out there as well. And also with the VMAs, I don't ever watch that stuff, but apparently there was a lot of drama going on at it, and once again, you had just a lot of lascivious things. So it's just crazy how they distract people with all of this, and people look up to people like this, yet there are real issues going on in the world. If our economy is on the brink of collapse and people are busy talking about someone having a wardrobe malfunction or some beef between celebrities that no one will ever meet or truly know the true character of, it's just crazy how they keep the masses asleep. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Take care, and Yahweh bless you.